Good morning, everyone. I think we've got a few more still trying to join, but we'll get started now just so as we're not wasting any of your time. So thank you, everybody, for making the time to join this webinar this morning, which is brought to you by Wavenet in association with our close partner, Redstor. And this session is focused around whether your Microsoft 365 data is actually being protected. I'm Jason Evans, the Director of Digital Transformation for Wavenet, and I'm going to be hosting this session for you today, but I have alongside me Harpal Chima, who's one of the Senior Account Managers for Redstor, and also Adam Cronin, who's one of the pre-sales consultants for Redstor as well. Andy, could you, Adam, could you move on to the next slide for everyone, please? So just to give you a bit of a background on Wavenet. So Wavenet are now turning over in the region of £50 million for 2019. We've actually grown since that point, so we're likely to be in the order of £65 million of turnover this year. We're a nationwide business with actually 7 UK offices now. So we need to get our slide updated here, but yeah, just goes to show that yeah, we're nationwide and we're growing quite rapidly now. I imagine a number of you won't have heard of us just yet, but the name's getting out there as a result of the excellent services that we're providing and the quality of customer service that we're delivering as well. So we've got a UK wide area network with POPs right across the country that we're delivering WAN connectivity from, but also delivering a number of key managed services as well. And that includes the services from our close partner Redstor, as well as a number of unified communication platforms and services out to Azure and AWS. We've got over 200 very passionate employees. I'd like to count myself as one of those. I have come across as passionate here today. And we've got over 8,000 very, very happy customers that we look after as well. Slightly different for our organisation is that we also have a wholesale channel business. So as well as looking after customers directly, we also have a wide array of partners that we deliver services to, who deliver those services out to their own customer bases as well. And we've managed to grow to over 250 wholesale partners as of today. And just to give you a bit of a vanity slide here, but just to give you a bit of a feel for the customers that we look after as Wavenet. So we've got the likes of Mazars, who are one of the leading accountancy practices in the UK and globally. Dentons, who are the world's largest law firm. Dyson, who you'll know of as the manufacturers and designers of those weird and wonderful and very expensive hoovers that we all use, and the hand dryers in just about every toilet we come across out in the public spaces today. But we're also delivering services out to critical national infrastructure services through the NHS and other care industries, as well as local government. But there's a number of key retail partners and customers that we provide services to as well. I'm sure we'll all have ventured into a Dunelm store or a Hobbycraft, maybe not just recently, but certainly over the last few years. They're big high street names, and View Cinemas. So we've got a wide cross section of customers across all industries that we deliver some key critical infrastructure services and solutions to. Now today's session, as I've said, is focused on providing protection for Microsoft 365 data. Now, this is something that's probably come more into focus than it has done before with the advent of this awful situation that we find ourselves in with coronavirus and COVID-19 as a consequence. We've come into lockdown, and we've been through a phase where organizations have had to very quickly get themselves enabled to deliver service and applications remotely to their workforces. And we've seen a number of customers that we've helped to expedite their transition to the cloud over the last 2-3 months. But there's something that we all, I think, take for granted. We're moving our applications into the cloud. We take for granted the fact that Microsoft will be looking after our data in O365, assuming for the most part that that they'll be backing that up for us, and the recovery time objective on that will be in line with our business objectives and meet the SLAs that we've come to expect of data that we have on premise. But that's something that we kind of take for granted, and that's actually not the case. Microsoft themselves do encourage their customers to use third-party providers to back up the data, and the time frame by which they'll actually guarantee the longevity of your data is actually very, very limited, a lot more limited than you might imagine. So today's session is very much focused around looking at the whys and wherefores of protecting your Microsoft 365 data to a greater extent than you are doing today, and how you can achieve that with our partner Redstor. So I'll hand over to Harpal now, who'll take you through an introduction of Redstor, and then hand over to Adam to give you a demonstration. So thanks very much, Harpal. I hand to you now.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Jason. Some really impressive figures on the growth of Wavenet business, and yeah, some very impressive list of names of customers there as well. Thank you everyone for joining us today and giving us the opportunity to present Redstor. Is your Office 365 data protected? Before I start, as we go along, if anyone has any questions, please don't hesitate to use the chat box on the right hand side of the screen. We'll endeavour to answer all your questions at the end, but if we don't, I'll make sure we follow up with an answer with a direct email. I'm actually amazed how much Office 365 is actually resonating at the moment, and it shows because we've got nearly 50 attendees on this session already listening in. To introduce, my name's Harpal. I'm a senior account manager. I've been at Redstor for 7 years now, and in my time I've seen a lot of evolution and changes, both within Redstor but also across our customers and their requirements. I'm joined by my technical colleague Adam Cronin. He's been with the organisation for, I believe, 17 years, and he'll be providing a technical overview of the Redstor Office 365 data protection service, and also really the features that make us different. The objective of the presentation today really is to provide an overview on why it's important to protect that data that is on the Office 365 platform, what Microsoft's role is with regard to the data, and where and how Redstor can assist in protecting that data, and really focusing on our key USPs. What makes us different and stand out from the crowd? Redstor, we are a data protection specialist, and yeah, we back up data, but I don't want to focus on backup. It's important to recognise 80% of our competition, they do the same thing. They back up the data, fast, efficient manner. It significantly reduces the time to backup compared to an on-prem solution. But we often find when you focus on backup, it becomes very much a point of parity rather than a differentiator. Where we stand out, where we win, is when we focus on the 20% where we're different, where we add value to you, to your team, and to your business. Ultimately, backup, it's a means to an end. No one buys backup to backup. Our customers invest in the Redstor service for the ability to access, recover, and archive that data. Now, our key USPs, and we'll actually go into them and show you them, incorporate instant data, the ability to stream your restores, archiving, the ability to reduce your on-prem footprint, Office 365 backups, the ability to have everything all on one platform, regardless whether that data is on the cloud, on-prem, and also simplicity, both technically and commercially. That's where we see our greatest strengths. When we win, when we onboard new customers, those are the key headline factors that IT managers highlight with regards to why they chose Redstor. Some headline information for you about Redstor on the screen. I always get the question, what do we do? So founded in 98, Redstor, we provide a next generation cloud data management service that enables our customers to protect, recover, archive, and the ability to back up Office 365 data through a single control center. Importantly, Redstor, we're a vendor in our own right. We develop the software, we support the infrastructure, we also own the support. We offer our partners and their customers a complete end-to-end data management experience. We launched our cloud service in 2005, and across all our storage platforms, we've got approximately 7 to 8 petabytes of data globally. Now, our clients, they range from top 100 accountancy and law firms. We've got over 50% of the UK primary schools, public sector organisations, charities, veterinary practices. One of the most beautiful things about data is it's industry agnostic. As a business, Redstor, we haven't been standing still. In fact, if we stood still, we would have gone backwards. We've invested significantly in the development of the software. And as I touched on, some of the key features include DR, and one of the main challenges with cloud when I actually started 7 years ago was recoveries. You're at the mercy of your bandwidth. And with instant data, we enable the ability to actually stream your restores, archiving, the ability to reduce your on-prem footprint, and Office 365 integration, having a single platform for all your data. We protect Mail, OneDrive and SharePoint. We will be launching Teams by the end of this month. Now, I'm conscious there are a lot of technologies out there, and in the interest of being upfront, Redstor, we don't count ourselves as being the cheapest, but what we always emphasize is we are more than just simply backup. We provide an end-to-end data management service based at a competitive price point. Where we really compete is if our clients are looking for a true cloud-based data management specialist to add value to their business, if they're looking for a GDPR compliant data protection vendor, and also they want to ensure that the data remains sovereign within the UK. Why protect Office 365? It's a good question. In theory, the Microsoft 365 cloud, it's a safe place where you can hold and store your data. You click a button, it saves itself somewhere in the cloud. You can access wherever you like. If you delete a file by mistake, Microsoft support team, they've got a backup server somewhere with endless free storage, right? Lots of people think that, but then again, lots of people thought eating a bat wouldn't cause the biggest global pandemic in our lifetime. But here we are. So just to be clear, this quote isn't just something we've put together. I've taken that straight out from the end user agreement, which organizations sign up to when they're onboarding to Office 365. Microsoft explicitly states that their responsibility is the uptime of the platform, and they actually suggest the data should be protected using a third-party application and service. Now, in my opinion, this is a classic example of organizations putting wording on their contract to cover their own backside in the case anything happens. Now, it's important to be aware with Office 365 user accounts, they're increasingly vulnerable to malware attacks and also very prone to accidental deletion. Data loss can disrupt business activity, we can result in a breach of regulations, and I think fundamentally it can damage reputations irreparably. Ultimately, the responsibility for data protection, it lies with the data owner. And that invariably leads to heads of IT and IT managers asking the question, is Microsoft's native data protection enough? Interestingly, we've seen the adoption rate for Microsoft services since the COVID-19 outbreak. It's gone up by 700%, which is going to increase the strain and the load on their platform, and it's increased the potential for downtime. By Microsoft's own admission, 80% of the data on Office 365, it's not being protected outside of Microsoft. And applications like OneDrive, SharePoint, which power much of the collaboration, can be put in jeopardy when user error, hacking, sync issues, or even malicious insiders, they cause data loss. Both those apps leverage a primary and a secondary recycling bin. They've got a 93-day retention period, but that can be emptied at any time, which means that the data is ultimately irretrievable. How secure is the data? In their defense, look, Microsoft, they do all they can to put safeguards in place so that customers don't lose data. But the bottom line is Microsoft, they don't specialize in data protection and recovery. Ultimately, you as the data owner, you are responsible for these activities in order to keep your organization's data safe in the cloud. And actually, Microsoft, they push the responsibility back to you to ensure your data is protected And the 5 reasons for downtime historically have been human error, software, malicious insiders, hackers, and viruses, malware. So it's no surprise really that these are the areas Microsoft hands over to you to take responsibility, because in some ways you can argue it's outside their scope. It's outside what they can actually do. Now, there's an age-old saying I'm sure you've all heard of: you don't put all your eggs in one basket. Organizations, you don't back up and store data in the same server room where all the kit is. So it begs the question why IT professionals think it's okay to store data with Microsoft and let it be their responsibility. And I often find the answer really is no one gets shot by Microsoft. It's easy to put everything with Microsoft, really. And look, Microsoft, they offer geo redundancy, but people often mistake that for backup. The backup and recoverability that they provide and what users assume they're getting is often very different. So meaning, aside from the standard precautions that Office 365 is in place, it's a case of understanding what level of control you have to your data and how much access you really want to it. I didn't know this, but if you delete a user as well, whether you meant to or not, the deletion is replicated across the network. And that can be deletion of their personal SharePoint sites or their OneDrive data. Next slide, Adam. So when that data is deleted or corrupted, businesses, they face 3 major problems. That can be 1, the loss of data, 2, the loss of time, and 3, the loss of money. The most important part of backup really is the restore process. Now, Microsoft, they provide exceptional availability, and they can't be expected to focus elsewhere on extended retention or old user data. And actually, being solely reliant on Microsoft support, you're going to be looking at a lot of FAQs, and it's going to be very time consuming. It's not possible to restore files in bulk when you're using standard tools in SharePoint. That means that if you're unable to recover from ransomware attacks, that means that you're unable to recover from ransomware attacks with the standard tools. Now, there are developers that put together PowerShell scripts to perform bulk recoveries, but they're not supported by Microsoft. It's also important to note for mail, it's not possible to perform a so-called point-in-time restore. And ultimately, the best way to avoid any issue impacting severely on business continuity is really finding a third party that offers a streamed on-demand access to the data at a moment's notice. Now, the idea of security threat always brings to mind hackers and viruses. However, businesses experience threats from the inside as well as outside, and they're happening more often than you think. Organizations are falling victim to threats posed by their very own employees, and that can be intentionally and unintentionally. Access to files and contacts changes so quickly. It can be hard to keep an eye on those who you've installed the most trust. Now, Microsoft, they've got no way of knowing the difference between a regular user and a terminated employee who's attempting to delete critical data before they depart. In addition, some users unknowingly create serious threats by downloading infected files or accidentally leaking username and passwords to sites they thought they could trust. Another example actually is evidence tampering. Imagine an employee strategically deletes incriminating emails or files and actually keep those objects out of the reach of legal, compliance, or HR departments. Now, with regards to external threats, malware, viruses, ransomware, it's done serious damage to organizations across the globe. We're seeing, new articles, new press releases, at least big ones. We're talking at least once a month over the last 12 months. And we're not only talking about reputations, but privacy and the security of internal and customer data as well. Now, external threats can sneak in through emails, attachments, and it isn't always enough just to educate users on what to look out for, especially when those infected messages seem so compelling. Now, Exchange's online limited backup and recovery functions are inadequate to handle serious attacks. And regular backups, that's the only way that will ensure you keep a separate copy of your data that's uninfected, and that will enable you to recover quickly as well. Now, retention, it is possible with the Microsoft E3, E5 and Exchange subscriptions. And Microsoft actually introduced retention for two reasons. One was save data for a certain period of time, and two was to delete that data for a certain period of time. But there's a difference in how retention works on Mail, SharePoint and OneDrive, as the slide shows. With Mail, items are actually moved to the deleted items folder to the recoverable items folder, and periodically a process runs that checks whether those items comply with the set retention policy. If they don't, they're permanently removed. And if that's the case, some of those items, they will remain the recoverable items folder. Now, the retention process with SharePoint is very different. It all depends on whether the data already existed when the retention policy was created. Now, I should note as well, retention only produces one version of that data. If you want to keep multiple versions, you should have really versioning. Now, I hope the last couple of slides, they've explained and provided context with regards to why it's important to protect your Office 365 data. The next couple of slides, I'm going to touch on really what Redstor can help you and how Redstor can help you in protecting that data. And really what makes us different. Now, firstly, we ensure your organization will comply with all the legal and compliance requirements to protect that data. And importantly, we hold it in a secure encrypted format that's offsite. Second, and I touched on one of our USPs, is simplicity. We ensure our service is simple to set up technically. There's no 2-week training course that's required, and it is very much an easy to use and manage solution. Really, once it's set up, once you've got all your users and the data is protected, there is very minimal human intervention required on a day-to-day basis. Importantly, there's no hardware requirement. Redstor, we don't sell any hardware. Our service really is a true cloud solution that can scale as your business grows, or alternatively, if the business decides to sell an arm or heaven forbid is forced to scale down, we amend the invoice, ensuring you only pay for what you're consuming, and there's no commitments with hardware where there's a 3 or 5 year sweat out period. Now with Redstor, you can recover that data back to Office 365. You can recover it back on-prem, or alternatively to a hosted platform of your choice. Our service enables you to have options with regards to recovery. Everything is audited. Organizations can see who has touched what. Deletions require a 24-hour cooling off period and require multiple confirmation from different parties within the organization. And ultimately, you're not at the mercy of Microsoft or a third party with regard to the data. Going back to the analogy, your eggs are in separate baskets. You can do restores yourself without having to submit support tickets or having to wait for your MSP to get back to you. Effectively, it enables you to have full control of your own data. Now, one of the reasons we've done well in the industries we have is because we can guarantee data sovereignty. Adam actually briefly showed that next slide, and he's going to touch on the architecture, but fundamentally, all our customers' data remains in 2 UK-based data centers. Only the encryption key holders have access to that data. With regards to restores and touching on our USPs, one of our key USPs is instant data. Backup, ultimately, it's simple. The challenge is about getting that data back quickly and easily. And this is where we really start addressing the elephant in the room, because it can take an awful long time to send data through limited bandwidth. If you pull up a bandwidth calculator online and being conservative, 1 terabyte of data, 10 meg line, you're still talking 10 days to get all that data back. Whereas with Redstor, with instant data, you can shave best part of 9 days, 23 hours and 45, 50 minutes off that recovery process by being able to access that data immediately. With instant data, not only can you recover, you can actually access the data by mounting it as a machine. And actually, I had a customer or prospect who became a customer when they were on trial. They actually, in his own words, he described it as presenting a ghost of the machine without having it fully recovered. I always use the analogy Netflix because everyone uses it, everyone knows how it works. I suppose the question is, do you think Netflix would have the users, the number of subscribers it does, if you had to download every film or every series before you could find the one you actually want to watch? the point with instant data and really one of the USPs with Redstor is forget about backup. That's easy. Focus on recovery, the speed of recovery, and the simplicity. And the final USP, and really where our service differs from the competition, is the simplicity of the pricing model. A lot of our competitors have got upfront hardware commitments. They've got pricing models based on CPU, RAM, the number of servers, the number of users, and there's also additional grey costs that are often hidden in the T's and C's for egress charges. So when you actually do a restore, there's an additional cost to get your own data back. With Redstor, there's no upfront costs. Our investment model is purely based on the data on the platform. So we operate based on a per terabyte model based on the data selected. You could have 100 Office 365 accounts and they could be using Mail, OneDrive and SharePoint with a terabyte. You could have 10 users on Mail with a terabyte. You could be protecting one file server with a terabyte. The monthly investment would still be the same. Now I'm going to hand over to Adam, who's going to touch on the Redstor architecture, what it looks like on the back end, our Office 365 sizing tool, the Redstor Cloud Console. He's actually going to show you the instant data feature in action, touch on the roadmap, and he's always keen and always like to emphasize the support we offer. A service I often find is only as good as the support, and I'm always keen to make sure people are aware our terabyte per terabyte model incorporates everything from support, onboarding to restores, that there's no grey costs. Over to you, Adam.
Thank you. Thanks, Harpal. Okay, so quick network diagram here. So I think it's important just to talk about how this all fits together. So obviously the partnership between Redstor and Wavenet, we provide all of the cloud storage. So typically we talk about our 2 UK data centres. Just for your notes, our primary location is in an Equinix Tier 3 data centre in Slough. Our secondary DR site is located in Reading, an Everest Tier 3 data centre, and that's all managed and supported by Redstor and Wavenet. And of course, all of that infrastructure in those 2 different locations, we own. They're our servers, they're our storage with our software loaded on them. I think since Brexit and, you know, international companies, let's say they've got an organization in Germany as an example, in some of those territories where we don't have data centers, we are leveraging infrastructure as a service, maybe with AWS or Azure or Rackspace or whoever we need to use in order to facilitate that. So if you have any questions about data outside of the UK, we can certainly facilitate that. So a typical model is you have your management console. Again, we're going to talk more about Office 365, but for your notes, we can protect servers, desktops and laptops, virtualized environments, network shares, and wherever you deploy our agent, because remember Harpal said it's software only, you don't need any hardware. All of those devices can be remote managed and maintained via our central control center, and a whole different operating system spread, Windows, Mac and Linux, and obviously other application integration. And we don't really talk too much about this, but if you wish and you desire, you can also have a local copy. And then that just leaves me to the final piece, which is what I'm going to show you in a second, which is our integration to back up Office 365. So before you start talking to your customers about Office 365, they might want to know roughly how much data they have within OneDrive, Mail and SharePoint. So there's a little application that our developers have developed, which is this size tool. So after this webinar, I think Wavenet are going to send this around to the attendees. You can simply download the little executable, click on the fetch data. You'll then be asked to log in with your Office 365 tenant subscription, and then these values will get populated. So it's a great tool for being able to understand how much data you have have located in Office 365, and obviously that helps us in turn work out what the billing might be. So that's a great tool that we're going to distribute after this session. So let's get on with a practical demonstration of what we call our cloud-to-cloud service. So let's just bring up our web browser. So effectively what I'm logging into here is our backup client in the sky. So you log in with your Redstor credentials that we'll provide you. So let me just log in. And then once we're in here, you'll see I've already got email configured, OneDrive and SharePoint. But if you're a brand new customer setting up the subscription, you can get this set up in minutes. You just simply click on the add button, choose the service that you want to back up. So in this case, Office 365. You'll note that G Suite is coming very, very soon at the end of this month. So if I click on next, you can then choose the service. So if I was going to do Exchange, when I hit next once more, it will then ask me to click next and type in my subscription email address again for Office 365. And that's all you need to do. That then marries the two together and then makes it really easy to go and select your users. So here's one I prepared earlier. So this is my mail user. I'll show you that we're currently backing up mail, calendar, and my contacts. I'm actually selecting all of my mailboxes. Where that's important is that if the administrator of Office 365 creates a new user in this department, it will automatically get included for backup. And of course, you can exclude users as well, but it's quite a nice feature to know that right at the top here, you can select all users. And then you can, of course, customize a backup schedule. Now, again, it's not using your bandwidth, so you can back up as often as you like, really. Now, this is very much the similar configuration for OneDrive and SharePoint. It can all be set up in a matter of minutes. Now, in terms of recoveries, if an end user calls up the help desk and says, look, I've deleted some email, or maybe like Harpal mentioned, there's some malicious activity that's gone on, the help desk engineer can connect into our cloud-to-cloud portal, click on the recover button, and then we can drill down into in this case, this user's mailbox. So if I was going to restore my email, I can either do a top level restore to restore all of my 2.2 gig. However, in this case, I just want to identify some email that I might have deleted a day or two ago. So if I hit the view button, and then Harpal touched on the retention as well, I can go back in time. So if I maybe choose as my email would have looked like on the 30th of April, I can then drill into this user's mailbox. I can then go and find his inbox and any other subfolders. And there we go. We've got a couple of emails that were received on the 30th. So I'm going to recover those 3 emails for that user. So I'm going to just click on the recover button. And then you're then taken back to Office 365 just to confirm whoever's on the help desk has privileges to be able to perform that restore. And of course, everything is audited. So if I type that in right, I pop in my password, choose to stay signed in, which it prompts me every time. And then what we should see is a restore will be queued. There it is. So what's effectively happening now is the backup client in the cloud is now actually performing that restore of those free emails for that user. So if I quickly now log in to my user and into their Outlook, let me just explain what the user experience is like. So here's my user's email, there's his inbox. And what we in fact do is we interject a folder called Redstor Restore. That then makes sure it's really easy for the user to go and find what's been restored back on their behalf. And you'll see here I've got a folder with the 30th of April, which is the restore that I've just performed. And if I drill into that mailbox and then into the inbox, there's the 3 mail items that I've just performed or performed the restore for. So the user's able to go, yep, thank you very much. There's the mail items I'm looking for, and perhaps drag them back to their inbox, and then they can delete this Redstor Restore folder if they wish. It will not affect the actual backup. It's just what's been placed in their email. So the other thing that Harpal touched on is this ability to instantly present the data back in a few mouse clicks. So let's talk about instant data very briefly. So I'm going to give you a practical demo of this as well. So in order to get the data into our Redstor service, we have a backup agent. This sits on your servers and workstation, is doing the heavy lifting. This is what's performing that incremental backup of whatever you've selected into our cloud so that you can do various different restores. And again, there's numerous ways of getting back the data. But what I'd like to do is Harpal mentioned about 10 terabytes taking about 9 days to restore, which is absolutely correct about. So if I just connect into my management console, and I'm going to connect into an area where I have a server with those sorts of scales of data. So there we go. I've got a Windows 10 system that's currently backing up a Synology NAS, and that's currently should have already backed up this morning. There we go, 1 o'clock this morning when I was fast asleep, and that's currently got 10.6 terabytes of data. So again, I'm just on a laptop, as I'm sure many of us are, working from home. I'm not in a data center. If I need to get my hands on that data, I simply right click on the system, choose our instant data tool. The help desk guy can also share this to a member of staff if they need to. In my case, I'm just going to open it on my laptop. And then what I'm going to do is there's a whole manner of different ways I can do recoveries, like full system restores and bare metal restores. In this case, I just want to get my hands on that 10 terabytes of data. So I'm going to now type in the encryption key used for that device. Right, so if I move that over there for a second and just show you that my laptop that you're all viewing has a C drive and a D drive. And now that I've typed in the encryption key, I'm going to present the last backup as a Z drive over here. So if we just hit mount, there we go, the drive just appears. And of course, now I can just browse and view all of the data out of that 10 terabyte data set. And in this case, let's go and have a little look at a video that I've plonked on my NAS. So just for a bit of fun, let's just fire that up quickly. And again, within seconds, I've got access to this movie in this case, and we can jump around in the movie and all is good. So look, a very quick example of how quickly I can present 10 terabytes of data that would have normally just over a network would have taken 9 days to send to the device. And of course, the point here is that when you have a disaster, the likelihood of you needing all of that 10 terabytes straight away is probably actually unrealistic. The chances are there'll be a 1 or 2% of very critical data that you need to access right here, right now. And obviously you can do that as you've just seen. So how does that actually work? So if you imagine there's the Redstor data center, and there's my backup set of the 10 terabytes I've just presented to my laptop. So when I popped in the encryption key, and in this case, I chose a Z drive to appear on my laptop, that then creates the framework and fools my machine into thinking there is a Z drive. Now, there is another way that we can restore, which is permanent restore, and that's when we want all of that 10 terabytes to actually be recovered to a server, which is not a problem either. And what that means is, as the restore is happening, if a user then tries to access a file that hasn't yet come across the wire, all of a sudden that user's restore is a higher priority than any of the other data that just hasn't been requested by a user or application as yet. So again, back to what Harpal mentioned, it's now not like a conventional restore. It's very much like the Netflix approach, whereas the users and applications are choosing what's accessed now, as opposed to just restoring all of the data that hasn't been requested and having to wait. So lots of detail on our roadmap. I'm not going to go through each of these line items, but I guess some of the key points is the development that we're doing right now. So we're doing far more integration into Office 365. Teams, we can already back up the Teams data, but when you put a document in Teams, you normally put a description about, Fred, this is the document that I really think you should look at, and so on and so forth. So chat structures, the wikis, the files, the groups, that's all been added into additional team support. Next month, we're doing OneNote and public folders within Exchange. July, something else that I'm looking forward to is the ability to choose a mailbox, maybe within Redstor in Office 365, that perhaps the user's been deleted maybe several months ago, and the ability to restore that email as a PST file. And of course, then you can do what you like with that data once you've extracted it from Redstor. So there's lots of good things to come. I think it's also worth noting that G Suite is also going to be released at the end of this month. And there's all sorts of things that we're busy doing to make our management console, reseller portals, and additional support for recovering Unix systems in Azure. So there's really a lot going on in terms of development. I think it's important to know it's not a static product. We are busy doing all of the different development, and a lot of the feedback actually comes back from our end customers via our channel and like Wavenet, telling us that, you know, there's certain pieces in the software that they need or their customers need. So please talk to us, let us know what we need to be doing in the future. And the very final slide I'd like to cover off is all of this stuff is great until you have a support question or you need some help. So just a quick touch on that. So our platform, we adopt the 5 nines. So therefore, there is really no downtime. There is some scheduled downtime that we then notify all of our customers and partners to say that we're going to do some maintenance and updates, but we strictly follow the 5 nines, where the server or our servers and data centers are up all of the time. Obviously, the platform's monitored 24/7, and that also includes our support. So, you know, 1 o'clock in the morning, if you've lost a server and that consultant's never seen Redstor before and needs that help in order to get up and running and get servers and systems built, we do have engineers on call 24/7. We also have online portals and resource on our support.redstor.com address. Everything's up there. We don't hide things. That, you know, if you want to go and look and search for VSS and maybe there's a warning message in the backup client, we really do put a lot of emphasis on providing feedback through that support site, and there's lots of content there. Also, we have a net promoter score of +70. That's as it looked like on the 20th of April when we were preparing these slides. And what that effectively means is when we send a survey out to our customers, they in turn would then recommend us and our services to other friendly customers or organizations that they deal with. So that's a really good score, and we're really pleased with that and the response we get from our existing customers. So I think, am I handing back to Harpal or am I handing back to Jason? I think Harpal, I think you're just closing, and then
there's a couple of questions that would be good to touch on. Jason, do you want to ask them?
Yeah, I'll do that. But I was just going to say there as well. Obviously, folks, we've been focused very much on Microsoft 365 protection today, but that's, you know, Redstor is not limited to just protecting 365. You know, we've touched on a few of those during the course of the presentation there, but you know, certainly in the last few weeks, you know, having had a wealth of experience with Redstor over the last few years, you know, we've helped you know, a raft of customers in protecting their assets and moving them from on-premise and up into one cloud platform or another, be that Azure or one of our private cloud environments, to help them to, you know, remote enable their workforces over the last few weeks. And Redstor's, you know, incredibly agile and capable in terms of, you know, enabling you to back up your key on-premise assets and migrate those to the cloud. But also, you know, its capabilities go way beyond just Microsoft 365 cloud protection as well. So I think we've had a number of questions in around those items. So I'll just run through a few of those and see if we can't you know, challenge Harpal and Adam to address those that have come in. We'll see how they fare.
Yeah.
So yeah, the first one from Rich. Thanks to Rich for the question. Was can you back up Azure hosted CRM? And obviously that can be, you know, not just a Microsoft application. That could be just a generic CRM that's deployed into the Azure cloud. So yeah, I'll put that to Harpal or Adam to.
Yeah, I'll take that one. I'll take that one if
Yeah,
if that's okay. Hi, it's Adam here again. Thanks. So the very brief answer is no, not at the moment. The actual cloud applications, like there's hosted SQL, which is a cloud app, we haven't yet developed the integration. However, if it was a standard infrastructure as a service server placed in Azure or Rackspace or AWS, then that's fine. We can load our backup agent on there, whether it's SQL or Linux. But that is definitely something that's on our roadmap for the future. So where you saw the cloud to cloud, and then we've obviously done Office 365, and then we've got G Suite going live at the end of the month. Once that's all in place, again, we have a bit of a committee, and we do regular votes with our partners on what we should be doing next, and that's definitely on the roadmap. I just don't have any timescales of when it's going to be created. But so the short answer is no, not at the moment. Come and talk to us if you've got a particular opportunity right now, and you're able to share the sort of data quantities. That's the sort of information we need to try and get that bumped up the ladder, so to speak, in terms of our roadmap.
Well, what I will say on that one, Adam, is obviously if that's a VM running in Azure, we do have the capability of backing up the VM itself, and
yeah,
also
absolutely
giving instant data access to all of the files that constitute that particular VM server. So moving on to another one, which is a little more interesting, actually. So thanks to Matt for this one. What if you have retention set up under security and compliance within Microsoft 365? Because this stores all data for 7 years. That's a really interesting question, that one. So Microsoft do have a security and compliance add-on to the 365 suite. Which does give the capability to secure the data for an extended period. Although the capabilities of that are fairly limited, it's not particularly flexible, and the costs are quite high when you compare it to what we're able to achieve with Redstor. So I'll hand over to either Harpal or Adam to take that one a little bit further for you in terms of how Redstor seek to address something better than Microsoft deliver through that service.
Again, I'm happy to take that question. So again, when I was going through my demonstration, I don't think we really talked about the retention. So we have our standard retention, which is 4 months. That's all of the backups in the current month, all of the backups in the previous month, and then 2 of the oldest month ends that you have. Now, in a scenario where an organization like a legal firm might need to keep data for 7 years, that's not a problem in terms of our back end. We can crank up the retention, and you can recover or leave in terms of retention as much as you require. In terms of Microsoft providing that, again, with the Microsoft backup, I think it's key to find out where the data is actually stored. So, are you storing that, or is Microsoft storing that within Azure, and will it still be accessible in the event of Microsoft having a bad day? So I guess there's some considerations to think of there, but in terms of data retention, it's not a problem with our service. We can crank up the retention to whatever the customer desires.
Thanks, Adam. That's great. So moving on, we've had questions in from some anonymous folks. So I can't give you a shout out here on these, but we've had a number of other questions around cloud applications such as Microsoft Dynamics, Salesforce Cloud. I think we've covered those already to a certain extent. So that those specific capabilities in terms of backing up those environments. Obviously, we can back up VMs, but the specific Dynamics environment and Salesforce is on the roadmap along with G Suite, and that will be coming a later point this year.
Absolutely.
Also, so we've had a question on, is the solution, the Redstor solution, compatible with 2-factor authentication with Microsoft 365?
That's a really good question. The answer is yes. I have it all turned off in my my demo world, because the last thing you want is when I show you a demo, I'm waiting for my phone to send me the notification to authenticate. So the real simple answer is yes. Also, the Redstor platform, when you saw me logging onto the console and putting in my username and password, we also support 2FA from that as well. Again, I don't have it turned on my demo world because it just is another thing for me to try and do while I'm driving the mouse. But yeah, the answer is yes.
Great stuff. Thanks again, Adam. Got a nice one here from another anonymous contributor. So if you wanted to follow the 3-2-1 rule for backup, how would one use Redstor? Can it be copied to different media?
The 3-2-1 rule. So normally I'm aware that in most practices you want to get the data as far away from the source as possible, and you also want that on 2 geographical locations. So in terms of Redstor, from a cloud backup, we offer the 2 locations. The data always sits in 2 different locations. So from a UK perspective, our primary location is a data center in Slough. Our secondary data center is in Reading. And that's with Office 365 extracting the data directly to our service. In terms of a standard server, we also can have a local copy as well, which is your third recovery point. So that's when you can have not only the 2 copies in the data center in Slough and Reading, but you could also have a NAS or a USB drive or any storage you like set up and configured as a local copy. So in terms of extracting the data to medium, you can recover the data as often as you like throughout the Redstor software, whether you're on the backup client or using that instant data, and you can write it to whatever media you like once you've done the restore. But typically we don't support any sort of third-party tape backends or anything like that. We definitely steer clear of that type of scenario. Hopefully I've answered the question there.
Yeah, no, I think so, Adam. I'll just add to that as well that we can lift and shift both virtual and bare metal server environments and restore to either of those environments as well. So obviously the images that we create you can pretty much store anywhere. Obviously it will get stored in the Redstor DCs, but you can evac that to store that externally as well to your heart's content, literally. So this is quite an interesting one actually, and yeah, fairly topical over the last couple of years as well. So Gary has asked whether we can make a comment on what happens to all of the data stored and replicated in our data centers. Is it being used in any sense for statistics gathering on cloud platform usage, or does it just simply sit there totally untouched?
Okay, yeah, there's lots of questions to answer there actually. So first of all, any of the data that ever gets sent to Redstor is encrypted. It's encrypted before it leaves the device, and then it's stored within those 2 different data centers as we described. Now, before the backup sort of finishes or part of the process, an index gets sent to our platform with some metadata, like the operating system that you're running, how many files you have, that you've got a C drive, and maybe it's 20% utilized. And those statistics actually are really useful. So although we can't see individual file names, you with your management console could perhaps see in a table which of your systems are slowly running up to 90% of their hard drive capacity. So we haven't actually gone into this today. Maybe that's another session that we can do around what we call our data insight. But effectively, once you install the backup client, yes, they're backing up the data. Yes, they're encrypting it to Redstor, but they are actually taking some other metadata that is really useful for you to be able to plan what servers need to be upgraded. Or you've got, so all of a sudden somebody's dumped a terabyte of data on your file server and you want to identify where that data has come from. So although yes, we've been just sort of looking at the normal backup client, there is loads of telemetry in the back end that is useful. But if I can't stress enough, Redstor, Wavenet do not have any access to your data. It's all encrypted using an encryption key that only the end customer knows, and we do not store the keys with Redstor.
Yeah, thanks. And we're certainly not sharing any of the data with third parties for analytics purposes. you can be very confident of that. So moving on, is it possible? And it sounds like somebody who's had some experience of Redstor previously, perhaps. Is it possible for the Redstor iOS app to see the O365 data protection and backup, not just the on-site backups?
So obviously the cloud to cloud is obviously you can't install some software for Office 365. So that's why we've gone the route we have with the cloud portal that you know the client in the sky that you log in, and it's really seamless and easy to install. I'm just trying to understand the question a little bit better so I can answer it. Obviously, then we've got our traditional agent that you can install on Windows OS's, Mac and Linux operating systems, and of course then you can select whatever data you like there, and then it's all centrally managed from the same management console. So I hope I've answered the question correctly there, or maybe just run that question again for me.
Okay, so yeah, just run it again just to be sure. Is it possible for the iOS app to see the O365 backup? I guess that's probably more of a status thing. You know, is it working? Has it completed? As opposed to anything else. You know, just to give folks confidence that element of the backup is actually functional and working.
Yeah. So look, any backup that happens to the platform, or more importantly, a backup that hasn't happened, that's all reported. There's a whole manner of different reports that you can be configured if you're offering a service for your customers, or even the end user just wants to receive an email daily to say you've backed up 6 terabytes and 3 terabytes of that is your Office 365 and the rest of that is your conventional servers. So all of that reporting is all built in, and yeah, it's really easy to configure. So yeah, there's a lot of reporting. You know, we are all about being able to let people know not only when things are working, but more importantly, you know, if errors happens, it's important to know about it. So yeah, there's plenty of reporting that you can use.
Great stuff. Thanks, Adam. And quickly, we're coming up to the hour, so I'll just get in this final question, which has had 3 thumbs up from the audience. Again, from Anonymous, so no shout out, I'm afraid. Is the portal compatible with Azure SSO for login?
I don't know is the honest answer. So you've got the dual factor authentication when you log in. And in fact, you do it once. So when you do the initial setup, if you remember when I clicked on the add button and I chose the service that I wanted to protect, in that case, I think it was Exchange. When you hit the next click, you're obviously taken off to the Microsoft authentication piece. However, you've got that set up, even if you've got it with dual factor authentication, once you've done that once, that's the only time you do it. You don't have to log in each time before the backup's scheduled to run, because obviously that wouldn't work. So I don't know the answer. I'm not familiar with that type of authentication piece, but yeah, definitely you put your user credentials in. If you've got dual factor authentication, your app or text message will appear. You confirm that and then all is good. You don't need to then keep on going in. So if that's something we need to research, then ping us an email and I can research it, or go and ask the developers if we support that technique.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely forward any further questions you have. That brings us to the end of the questions. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of close off and say, you know, a big thank you again to everyone who's taken the time out to join the session today. We thoroughly appreciate your attendance. We hope you've found it thoroughly informative. You know, I really thank Harpal and Adam for taking the time out as well to join us for this session, and look forward to running further events with you in the near future. Obviously, Wavenet are here to take any questions that the audience might have. Obviously, we'll talk to you about anything, not just Redstor. You know, our portfolio extends to quite a range of solutions and managed services. we're always here and would only welcome some questions or follow-ups from the audience on all manner of things. So once again, we really thank you for taking the time out today, and look forward to talking to you again soon. I don't know if Harpal's got anything
I
to
just
add
wanted
to that.
to add one thing. If anyone's seen anything that from what they've seen, there's an appetite to look at potentially testing this or trialing this. What we encourage, I would say, probably 8, 9 out of 10 of all my customers trial before they commit to the service. And I always emphasize there's no limitations on the trial platform. The trial platform is the live platform, and often trials extend to an onboarding, because once the data is on the platform, the restores and functionality has been tested, it's really just a case of getting the paperwork done, really. So yeah, if you like what you see, please feel free to contact your Wavenet account manager to get some commercials, and assuming the commercials are agreeable, we'd be keen to help you get set up on a no obligation 2-week trial of the service.
Absolutely, that's great, Harpal. Yeah, because most folks, like you say, do adopt a proof of concept or a trial, and generally they're thoroughly impressed with what they find, and we're only too happy, along with Redstor, to support those trials. So please do feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy to support you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, everybody.
That's great. Thanks, Harpal. Thanks, Adam. Thank you,
Take care.
everybody.
Cheers.
Catch you again soon. Thanks now. Cheers.